My granddaughter Zuri tugged at my sleeve during the wedding ceremony and whispered in my ear, "Grandma, she's not the bride." At first, I thought she was confused. "I'm Amara Okafor, 67 years old, and I've paid $45,000 for my only son Kofi's wedding to a woman I had never met before yesterday." When I finally looked closely at the bride, my heart stopped. This wasn't Malika, the woman whose photos Kofi had shown me for the past year. This wasn't the woman whose medical bills I'd paid, whose wedding dress I'd financed, whose honeymoon I'd gifted. This was a stranger, standing before the altar in a wedding gown that cost me $3,200, holding hands with my son who couldn't meet my eyes across the church. I sat frozen in the front pew, clutching my chest, as the pastor asked if anyone objected to this union. A lifetime of secrets began to unravel in that moment, and only my 9-year-old granddaughter had been brave enough to speak the truth. If you're listening to my story now, please click like and subscribe for more real-life dramas. Trust me, this wedding day surprise was just the beginning of the most devastating betrayal of my life. Before that fateful wedding day, I lived what I thought was a blessed life. After 40 years of hard work as a nurse, I had retired with a good pension and significant savings. My husband Joseph had passed away 5 years ago, leaving me a comfortable inheritance and our fully paid home in a nice suburban neighborhood. After his death, I poured all my love and attention into my family, my son Kofi, his daughter Zuri from his first marriage, and what I thought was his new relationship with Malika. I had always been generous with my family. When Kofi divorced Zuri's mother Nia 3 years ago, I helped him financially to ensure he got partial custody of my granddaughter. I loved having Zuri stay with me on weekends when Kofi was working. She was the light of my life, smart, observant, and honest to a fault. Kofi had always been my pride and joy. After Joseph died, Kofi checked on me daily, brought me groceries, and fixed things around the house. I never thought twice about helping him financially. When he lost his job last year, I paid his rent for 6 months. When his car broke down, I bought him a new one. When Zuri needed braces, I covered the entire $5,000 cost. That's what family does. We take care of each other. When Kofi introduced me to Malika through video calls last year, I was thrilled. She seemed perfect, kind, beautiful, and she made my son happy. She lived in another city, so our interactions were limited to those calls where she always thanked me profusely for my generosity. I sent her birthday gifts, Christmas presents, and when Kofi mentioned she needed emergency surgery, I immediately transferred $12,000 to help with medical expenses. "Mom, you're the best," Kofi would say. "Malika thinks of you as the mother she never had." I believed every word. In my comfortable home filled with family photos, I would sit in my favorite armchair planning how I would help them start their new life together. I had already decided to give them $50,000 as a wedding gift to help with a down payment on a house. I wanted them to have the security that Joseph and I had worked so hard to build. My friends sometimes questioned my generosity. My best friend Fatima especially would say, "Amara, you give too much. What are you keeping for yourself?" But I would just laugh and tell her that seeing my family happy was all I needed for myself. I spent my days volunteering at the community center, tending to my garden, and preparing for what I thought would be the happiest day of my son's life, his wedding to Malika. I helped plan every detail from afar, sending money whenever Kofi called with another expense. I never questioned anything because I trusted my son completely. The first sign that something wasn't right came the day before the wedding, when I finally arrived in the city where the ceremony would take place. I had expected to be involved in the rehearsal dinner, to finally meet Malika in person, to embrace my future daughter-in-law. Instead, Kofi met me at the hotel alone, with excuses about Malika being too busy with last-minute preparations. "But I've come all this way," I said, disappointed. "I've been looking forward to meeting her for a year." "Tomorrow, Mom," he promised, not quite meeting my eyes. "You'll have plenty of time with her after the ceremony." That evening, I called Malika's number, hoping to at least speak with her before the big day. A woman answered. "Hello?" "Malika, this is Amara, Kofi's mother." There was a pause, then, "I'm sorry. I think you have the wrong number. But this is the number Kofi gave me for Malika. I don't know any Kofi or Malika. You must have dialed incorrectly. I hung up, confused. When I tried to call back, the number was disconnected. I told myself it was just wedding stress making me dial wrong, but a small knot of worry began to form in my stomach. Later that night, as I was unpacking my suitcase, I found the photograph Kofi had given me of Malika, the one I had framed and placed on my mantel at home. I studied her beautiful face and tried to quiet my growing unease. I called Kofi again. Son, I tried calling Malika but couldn't reach her. Her phone broke yesterday, he said quickly. She's using a temporary one until after the honeymoon. I accepted his explanation, but something in his voice made the knot in my stomach tighten. Why wouldn't he let me meet her before the wedding? Why did he seem so nervous? That night I barely slept. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't place what it was. I told myself I was being silly, that tomorrow would put all my worries to rest. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather. The church looked beautiful, decorated with the flowers I had paid for. I sat in the front row, wearing my best dress, waiting to finally meet the woman who had been receiving my financial support for a year. When the music started and the bride began walking down the aisle, I turned with anticipation. The woman approaching was beautiful in the wedding dress I had financed, but she wasn't Malika. This woman was shorter, with different features, different hair, a completely different person from the photos I'd been shown. I felt like I was in a dream as the bride took her place next to my son. Kofi still wouldn't look at me. The ceremony proceeded as if everything was normal, while my mind raced with confusion. Was this a joke? Had there been some terrible mistake? That's when Zuri, who was sitting beside me after serving as flower girl, tugged at my sleeve and whispered those fateful words. Grandma, she's not the bride. The simple truth from a child's lips broke through my confusion. My granddaughter had noticed what I had been trying to deny. This woman was a stranger. The Malika I had been supporting for a year didn't exist, or at least wasn't the woman marrying my son. As the pastor asked if anyone objected to this union, I felt every eye in the church turn toward me. The bride, whoever she was, looked nervous. Kofi finally looked at me, his eyes pleading. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate deception. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. Who are you? I asked, my voice echoing in the suddenly silent church. The bride looked at Kofi, panic on her face. My son stepped forward. Mom, please don't do this. Let me explain later. Explain what? Where is Malika? Who is this woman? The bride spoke, her voice small. I'm Desta. Kofi and I have been together for 6 months. 6 months. While I had been sending money to help Malika for a year. There is no Malika, is there? I asked, my voice breaking. The look on my son's face told me everything I needed to know. The woman I had been supporting, whose medical bills I had paid, whose wedding I had financed, she had never existed. It had all been a lie. I felt the room spin around me. Guests were whispering. The pastor looked shocked. Zuri clutched my hand, frightened by what was happening. The wedding is off, I announced, surprised by the steadiness in my voice despite the earthquake happening inside me. Everyone please go home. This marriage is based on a lie. Kofi rushed toward me. Mom, you can't do this. We've spent so much money. You've spent so much of my money, I corrected him. Money you obtained through lies. I took Zuri's hand and walked out of the church, leaving behind a chorus of shocked voices and my son calling after me. I had just publicly stopped my only son's wedding, but in that moment, all I could think was that I didn't even know who my son really was anymore. As we reached the outside of the church, Zuri looked up at me with worried eyes. Grandma, are you okay? I wasn't okay. I had just discovered that my son had been lying to me for at least a year, had invented a fictional fiancée to extract money from me, and had nearly married another woman using my funds. But I squeezed Zuri's hand and managed to say, "We will be, sweetheart. We will be." The next morning I woke up in my hotel room with a heaviness in my chest that made it difficult to breathe. Zuri was asleep in the bed next to mine, having refused to go with her father after the disastrous wedding. My phone showed 27 missed calls from Kofi and several text messages begging me to hear him out. I ignored them all and instead called my friend Fatima back home. Amara, how was the wedding? She asked cheerfully. When I told her what had happened, she gasped. Oh my God, Amara. I always thought Kofi was taking advantage of your generosity, but this is criminal. I need to understand exactly how much money I've given him under false pretenses, I said. Can you go to my house and get my financial records? The blue folder in my desk drawer has all my bank statements. While waiting for Fatima to call back, I took Zuri for breakfast in the hotel restaurant. Her innocent face was clouded with worry. Is Daddy in trouble? She asked, pushing her pancakes around on her plate. I don't know yet, sweetheart, I answered truthfully. But I need to understand what happened. That lady wasn't the one in the pictures, Zuri said matter-of-factly. Daddy showed me pictures too and called her your new mommy Malika, but that wasn't her yesterday. I realized Zuri had been manipulated too. How long have you known about Desta? I asked gently. I only saw her yesterday for the first time, Zuri said, but I heard Daddy talking to someone named Desta on the phone a lot. When I asked, he said it was a work friend. This child had noticed what I had missed. While I had been sending money for Malika, Kofi had been dating Desta. Had Malika ever existed at all? My phone rang. Fatima was calling back. Amara, I have your statements. In the past year, you've transferred $7,500 to Kofi. That includes $45,000 for the wedding, $12,000 for supposed medical bills, $3,200 for the wedding dress, and various other expenses. The amount stunned me. I knew I had been generous, but I hadn't realized the total was so high. That was money from my retirement fund, money meant to secure my future. There's more, Fatima continued. I found letters from your bank warning about unusual activity on your account. They were trying to contact you about possible fraud. Letters I hadn't seen because Kofi collected my mail whenever I went on my senior center trips. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. After breakfast, I sat down with a notebook and began to reconstruct the timeline of Kofi's deception. When had it started? How had he maintained such an elaborate lie? I scrolled through my phone, looking at text messages supposedly from Malika. All of them were filled with gratitude for my generosity, excitement about joining our family, but notably lacking in personal details. Had Kofi been texting me from a second phone, pretending to be his fictional fiancée? I called the hospital where Malika had supposedly had her emergency surgery. I'm calling to check on a patient payment from last year, I told the billing department, under the name Malika Johnson. I'm sorry, ma'am. We have no record of a patient by that name. Another lie. The $12,000 I had sent for medical bills had never gone to any hospital. By lunchtime, I had filled several pages with notes. Every stone I turned over revealed another deception. The wedding venue had been paid only half of what Kofi had claimed they required. The caterer had been paid even less. The honeymoon tickets to Bali that I had purchased had been exchanged for cash. Around 2 p.m., a knock came at my hotel room door. I looked through the peephole to see Kofi standing there. I hesitated, then opened the door. My son stood before me, his eyes red-rimmed, his posture defeated. Mom, please let me explain. I let him in for Zuri's sake, who ran to her father with a hug despite everything. I remained standing, arms crossed. Yes, explain. Explain why you invented a fiancé. Explain where my $7,500 went. Kofi's eyes widened at the precise figure. You've been checking? Of course I've been checking. What did you think would happen when you brought a complete stranger to the altar? He sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Malika was real at the beginning. We dated for a few months last year. The photos I showed you were really her. And then, we broke up. But you were so excited about me settling down again, about Zuri having a new mother figure, and you were so generous with helping us. So you decided to keep pretending she existed, to keep taking my money, I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. I was in debt, Mom. Serious debt. Gambling, he admitted, staring at the floor. I needed the money. After Malika and I broke up, I kept the story going because I didn't know how to tell you the truth. And Desta? How does she fit into this? I met her 6 months ago. We fell in love. She didn't know about the Malika story at first. When I finally told her, she thought we should come clean with you. But I was afraid of losing your support. I convinced her that we'd tell you after the wedding. You were planning to introduce me to a new daughter-in-law and pretend she was the woman I'd been supporting for a year. Did you think I wouldn't notice they were different people? I didn't think it through, he admitted. I just kept digging myself deeper into the lie. I looked at my son, my only child, whom I had raised alone after his father died, whom I had sacrificed everything for, and felt like I was seeing a stranger. Where did the money go, Kofi? All of it. He couldn't meet my eyes. Gambling debts. And I bought a car for Desta. And some jewelry. The medical emergency, the surgery I paid $12,000 for, there wasn't one. I'm sorry, Mom. Each confession felt like another stab to my heart. And Zuri, you involved your daughter in this lie? I never meant to hurt anyone, he said, tears streaming down his face now. Especially not you or Zuri. Things just got out of control. I looked at my granddaughter, who was watching her father cry with confusion in her young eyes. She didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this. Zuri, honey, can you go watch TV in the bedroom for a few minutes while Grandma and Daddy talk? Once she was out of earshot, I turned back to my son. I need to know everything, Kofi. Every lie, every dollar, every detail. And then I need to decide what to do next. Over the next 3 hours, Kofi confessed everything. The story was even worse than I had imagined. Not only had he invented medical emergencies for the fictional Malaika, but he had also taken out loans in my name, forging my signature on documents. He had racked up $65,000 in gambling debts to dangerous people who were pressuring him for payment. The wedding had been rushed because one of his creditors had threatened him. How could you do this to me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I was desperate, Mom. After losing my job and the divorce, I felt like a failure. Gambling seemed like a way to fix everything quickly. And lying to me? Stealing from me? Was that your quick fix too? He hung his head. I kept telling myself I'd win big and pay you back before you ever knew. But I just kept losing more. As Kofi talked, I took notes, documenting every revelation. He had convinced Desta that I was wealthy beyond measure, that the money he got from me was just a small fraction of my fortune. She had no idea that he had been draining my retirement savings. Does Desta know the full truth now? I asked. Yes. After you left the church yesterday, I had to explain everything. She's furious with me. She says she won't stay with a man who would do this to his own mother. At least one person in this mess had some integrity. The bank statements show regular transfers to an account I don't recognize, I said, pointing to my notes. Kofi hesitated. That's my gambling bookie's account. You had me making direct deposits to your bookie? I was incredulous. You thought you were sending money for wedding expenses, he admitted. Every answer revealed new layers of deception. It wasn't just the fictional Malaika. It was an entire web of lies designed to extract as much money from me as possible. What about the house down payment money? I asked, referring to the $50,000 wedding gift I had planned to give them. I told people about it, he confessed. I already promised some of it to pay off debts. You promised money you didn't have? Money I hadn't even given you yet? He nodded miserably. By evening, I had pages of notes and a clearer picture of the situation. My son had stolen my identity, lied to me for over a year, used his own daughter as part of his cover story, and nearly married a woman under completely false pretenses. He had spent or promised nearly $150,000 of my money, most of which I would never see again. I was not just heartbroken, I was angry. And I was scared for my financial future. This was money I had worked decades to save, money I needed for my retirement years, for potential medical expenses as I aged. When Kofi finally left my hotel room, promising to return in the morning, I sat in stunned silence. Zuri came and sat beside me, her small hand finding mine. Grandma, are you sad? Yes, sweetheart, I am very sad. Did Daddy do something bad? I struggled to find an appropriate answer for a 9-year-old. Your daddy made some very big mistakes. He wasn't honest, and that's always wrong. Is that why the wedding stopped? Yes. Marriages have to be built on truth. She thought for a moment. Is Daddy going to jail? The question jolted me. I hadn't thought that far ahead, but identity theft and fraud were serious crimes. Could I send my own son to jail? Should I? I don't know yet, Zuri. I need to think about what happens next. That night, after putting Zuri to bed, I called Fatima again. I need your help, I told her. I need to consult a lawyer as soon as possible. I'll find someone, she promised. My cousin's daughter is a financial crimes attorney. I'll call her first thing in the morning. I barely slept that night. My mind kept replaying moments from the past year. All the times Kofi had called asking for money. All the times I had transferred funds without question. All the video calls with Malika, who had always been conveniently having connection problems that affected her video quality. How had I been so blind? The signs had been there all along. I had ignored them because I wanted to believe in my son. Wanted to believe in the happy future he was painting for us. By morning, my shock had hardened into resolve. I would not be a victim. I would find out exactly what had happened to my money, and I would hold my son accountable for his actions, no matter how painful that might be. The next day brought more revelations. Fatima's cousin's daughter, Nadia, called me early. As a financial crimes attorney, she asked pointed questions about Kofi's actions. Identity theft, fraud, forgery. These are serious offenses, Mrs. Okafor, she said gravely. Have you contacted the police? Not yet, I admitted. He's my son. I understand, but you need to protect yourself. If he's forged your signature on loan documents, you could be liable for debts you didn't incur. Her words sent a chill through me. This wasn't just about money I had willingly given under false pretenses. This was about potential financial ruin. What should I do? I asked. First, we need to freeze your credit immediately. Then we need to contact all your financial institutions to report the fraud. And yes, you should file a police report. But that would mean... Yes, it would mean potentially pressing charges against your son. I know that's difficult, but Mrs. Okafor, from what you've told me, this wasn't a one-time mistake. This was calculated, ongoing fraud. After hanging up, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, staring at the wall. Could I really file a police report against my own child? The child I had carried for 9 months, had nursed through illnesses, had cheered at graduations. My phone rang. It was Kofi. Mom, I'm coming over. We need to talk about what happens next. Yes, we do. An hour later, Kofi arrived looking even more haggard than the day before. Dark circles underlined his bloodshot eyes, and he hadn't bothered to shave. Zuri was watching cartoons, so we went out to the hotel balcony to talk. I've spoken to a lawyer, I told him without preamble. She says I should file a police report for identity theft and fraud. Kofi's face crumpled. Mom, please. I'll lose everything. My job, my freedom, custody of Zuri. You should have thought about that before you stole my identity and lied to me for a year. I'll pay you back, I swear. Every penny. With what money, Kofi? You're in debt to gambling sharks. You don't even have a real job right now, do you? That was another lie? He nodded, defeated. I lost my job 6 months ago. I've been pretending to go to work, but I've really been placing bets, trying to win enough to fix everything. Another lie uncovered. The lawyer says I need to protect myself, to make sure I'm not liable for the loans you took out in my name. I understand, he said quietly. But Mom, please don't send me to jail. Think about Zuri. She needs her father. At the mention of Zuri, I glanced through the glass doors to where my granddaughter sat innocently watching TV, unaware that her future was being decided in this conversation. What Zuri needs is a father who tells the truth, who doesn't use her as part of his con game. I know I've failed, Kofi admitted, but I want to make it right. Please give me a chance. As we talked, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Is this Amara Okafor? A gruff male voice asked. Yes, who is this? This is Vincent. Your son owes me $30,000 and I'm tired of waiting. I felt the blood drain from my face. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Kofi promised me the money from his wedding gift. Said his rich mama was giving him $50K. Well, I heard the wedding got called off, but that doesn't cancel his debt. Beside me, Kofi had gone pale, frantically gesturing for me to hang up. My son's financial dealings are not my responsibility, I said firmly. The man laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's not what Kofi said. He told me you'd cover his debts if anything went wrong, and I'm going to hold him to that. Are you threatening me? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Just explaining how things work. I'll be at your house tomorrow to collect. Kofi knows the address. The line went dead. I turned to my son, fury replacing fear. You gave loan sharks my home address? You told them I would pay your debts? I was desperate, Mom. They were going to hurt me. And now they might hurt me instead. Or Zuri. The full danger of the situation suddenly became clear. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about physical safety. I grabbed my phone and did what I should have done days ago. I called the police. Within an hour, 2 officers were in my hotel room, taking statements while Zuri napped in the bedroom. So you're saying your son created a fictional fiancée to extract money from you, forged your signature on loan documents, and gave your address to gambling creditors who are now threatening you, Officer Kimani clarified. Yes, I confirmed, avoiding Kofi's pleading eyes. Mrs. Okafor, these are serious allegations. Identity theft, fraud, forgery, criminal facilitation. We need to take your son into custody while we investigate. As they handcuffed Kofi, he looked at me one last time. Mom, please don't do this. You did this, Kofi, I said, tears finally breaking through my composure. You did this to yourself, to me, to Zuri. Now we all have to live with the consequences. After the police left with my son, I sank into a chair, overcome by the magnitude of what had just happened. I had just sent my only child to jail. But I also might have saved myself and Zuri from dangerous criminals. I called Nadia again. My son has been arrested, I said, my voice hollow. And apparently there are loan sharks expecting payment at my house tomorrow. You can't go home, she said immediately. Stay where you are. I'm coming to you. 2 hours later, Nadia arrived at my hotel, bringing with her a financial forensics specialist named Mr. Osei. Together, we went through everything. Bank statements, text messages, emails, loan documents Kofi had forged, even social media posts where he had bragged about his upcoming wedding and the generous gift his mother was giving. Mrs. Okafor, I have to be honest with you, Mr. Osei said gravely. The financial picture is worse than you thought. Your son has effectively cleaned out your retirement accounts. The $7,500 you know about is just what you transferred willingly. With the forged loans and credit cards, we're looking at close to $200,000 in total. The room seemed to tilt around me. $200,000. My entire life savings. Gone. There's more, Nadia added. The threat from this Vincent person is credible. We've contacted the police and they're setting up protection for you, but your home isn't safe right now. What am I going to do? I whispered, thinking of Zuri sleeping peacefully in the next room, unaware that her world had just collapsed. First, you're going to stay somewhere safe, Nadia said firmly. Second, we're going to fight to recover as much of your money as possible. Third, we're going to make sure these criminals can't hurt you or your granddaughter. In that moment, sitting in a hotel room far from home, with my son in jail and dangerous men looking for me, I realized how completely my life had been shattered by lies. The son I thought I knew was a stranger to me. The secure future I had worked so hard to build was in ruins. The only innocent person in this whole mess was Zuri, who would wake up tomorrow to learn that her father was in jail and her grandmother was in hiding. This was the lowest point, the darkest hour. But somehow I knew it wasn't the end of the story. I had survived losing my husband. I had raised a child alone. I had worked double shifts for decades to build a secure future. I was Amara Okafor, and I would not be defeated by betrayal, no matter how deep the wound. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings, police interviews, and hushed conversations while Zuri was occupied elsewhere. Nadia had arranged for us to, stay in a safe house while the police investigated both Kofi's fraud and the threats from his gambling creditors. Had to explain to Zuri in simple terms why we couldn't go home and why her father wasn't with us. Daddy made some very bad choices, I told her. He took money that wasn't his, and that's against the law. Now he has to face the consequences. Like when I took a cookie before dinner and had to go to time out? She asked. Something like that, but much more serious, I explained gently. Despite everything, I visited Kofi in jail. The sight of my son in an orange jumpsuit, separated from me by bulletproof glass, nearly broke me all over again. They've found the loan documents, I told him, and your gambling bookie has been arrested. I'm so sorry, Mom, he said, his voice thin through the telephone receiver. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far, Kofi. You chose to lie, again and again. You chose to put me and Zuri in danger. He hung his head. I know, I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm going to plead guilty. I won't drag you through a trial. It was a small mercy, but I appreciated it nonetheless. What will happen to you? With the identity theft and fraud charges, probably 3-5 years, he said quietly. Less with good behavior. The thought of my son spending years in prison was still difficult to accept, but I had to focus on what needed to be done now. I've filed for emergency custody of Zuri, I told him. Her mother hasn't contested it. Thank you for taking care of her, he said, tears in his eyes. She deserves better than me. She deserves the truth, I replied. And so did I. Outside the jail, Nadia was waiting for me. Mrs. Okafor, we've been working with the fraud department at your bank. They've managed to freeze some accounts where your money was transferred. We might be able to recover about $45,000. It was less than a quarter of what had been taken, but it was something. What about my home? Is it safe yet? The police arrested Vincent and 2 of his associates yesterday. They found evidence connecting them to several illegal gambling operations. They won't be threatening anyone for a long time. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small measure of relief. At least Zuri and I wouldn't be in physical danger. And the identity theft? I asked. We've placed fraud alerts on your credit. The banks have agreed to remove the fraudulent loans from your name once the criminal case is settled. Your credit will take a hit, but it won't be permanent. That evening, I met with a financial advisor recommended by Nadia. The picture she painted was sobering. Mrs. Okafor, even if you recover the $45,000, you've lost most of your retirement savings. At your age, there isn't much time to rebuild that nest egg. What are my options? I asked, determined to face reality. You may need to sell your home and downsize significantly. You might have to return to work, at least part-time, and you'll need to budget carefully, especially now that you're caring for your granddaughter. The prospect of returning to nursing in my late 60s wasn't appealing, but I would do whatever was necessary. Zuri depended on me now. Over the next few days, I developed a plan with my advisors. I would sell my house and move to a smaller apartment. I would look for part-time work as a nurse consultant. I would apply for guardianship of Zuri and seek child support from her mother. It won't be easy, the financial advisor warned. You're essentially starting over at retirement age. I've started over before, I replied, thinking of when Joseph died. I can do it again. The next challenge was confronting Kofi's abandoned bride, Desta. I owed her an explanation, and she might have information that could help recover more of my money. I arranged to meet her at a quiet coffee shop near the safe house. When she walked in, I recognized her immediately as the woman from the aborted wedding. She was beautiful, with kind eyes now filled with wariness. Mrs. Okafor, she said, extending her hand. Thank you for meeting me. Please, call me Amara, I said, shaking her hand. For a moment, we sat in awkward silence, 2 women connected by the same betrayal. I want you to know I had no idea about Malika, Desta finally said. When Kofi told me about the wedding gift you were planning to give us, I thought it was excessive, but he convinced me you were wealthy and generous. Did he tell you what else he had taken from me? She shook her head. Not until after the wedding fell apart. I knew he had gambling problems, but I thought he was getting help. I didn't know he was using your money to pay debts. Did he give you gifts? Expensive things? I asked, not accusingly but seeking information. Desta looked down at her hands. He bought me a car and some jewelry. I've already sold the jewelry to pay back the caterer who never got their final payment, and I'm returning the car to the dealership. I nodded, appreciating her honesty. Did Kofi ever mention where he kept records of his gambling debts? Or where he might have hidden money? He had a storage unit, Desta replied. He was secretive about it. Said it was just for old furniture, but he went there often. I have the key. He left it at my apartment before he was arrested. This was new information, a potential lead to recovering more of my funds. I know this is awkward, Desta said hesitantly, but I want to help make things right. What Kofi did to you was unforgivable. Thank you, I said sincerely. I appreciate that you're willing to help. As we parted, Desta handed me the storage unit key and a slip of paper with the address. I hope you find what you're looking for, she said. And I'm truly sorry for the part I played, however unknowingly. The next day, Nadia accompanied me to the storage unit. It was in an industrial area on the outskirts of town, one of hundreds of identical metal doors in long rows. The key worked, and we rolled up the door to reveal a space about the size of a small bedroom. At first glance, it did contain furniture, an old couch, some chairs, boxes labeled kitchen and books. But as we moved deeper into the unit, we found a metal filing cabinet in the back corner. "This could be something," Nadia said, trying the drawers. They were locked. "Let me try a few things." While she worked on the cabinet, I examined the rest of the unit, looking for anything suspicious. Under the couch, I found a shoebox that contained several burner phones and a small notebook. The notebook was filled with names, numbers, and dates, a record of bets placed and debts owed. "I got it open," Nadia announced, pulling open the filing cabinet drawer. Inside were folders labeled with creditors' names, bank statements, and most surprisingly, a stack of cashier's checks made out to Kofi that had never been cashed. "They totaled $28,500. He must have been keeping some of your money here as a backup plan," Nadia suggested. "These are still valid. We can recover this amount immediately. Between the $45,000 the bank might recover and these cashier's checks, I could potentially get back $73,500 of the nearly $200,000 taken from me." It was still a devastating loss, but it meant I might not have to return to work full-time at my age. The other significant find was a document showing that Kofi had purchased a small life insurance policy on me 6 months ago, naming himself as the beneficiary. The implications were chilling. Had he been planning something even worse than fraud? Armed with this new evidence, we went straight to the police station. Detective Kamani added the insurance policy to Kofi's growing list of charges and sent officers to investigate the names in the gambling notebook. "This could lead to more arrests in the illegal gambling ring," he explained. "Your son's records are quite detailed." That evening, back at the safe house, I sat with Zuri as she drew pictures of butterflies and rainbows. Her innocence was a balm to my battered spirit. "Grandma?" she asked suddenly. "Are we ever going home?" "Not to the old house," I said gently. "But we're going to have a new home soon, just you and me." "What about Daddy?" I had been dreading this question. Daddy has to stay where he is for a while. He made some very bad choices, and now he has to face the consequences. "Like jail?" she asked with the directness only children possess. "Yes, sweetheart, like jail." She considered this, her little brow furrowed in concentration. "Is it my fault? Because I told you that lady wasn't the bride?" My heart broke. "No, Zuri, not at all. You told the truth. And telling the truth is always the right thing to do. What happened is entirely your father's fault, not yours." She seemed satisfied with this answer and returned to her drawing, adding a big sun in the corner of her paper. "This is our new home," she explained, pointing to a simple house she'd drawn. "See? It has flowers and a dog." "We don't have a dog," I reminded her with a smile. "Not yet," she replied confidently, "but in our new life, we will." In that moment, looking at my granddaughter's hopeful vision of our future, I made a promise to myself. No matter what it took, I would rebuild our lives. I would create a stable, loving home for Zuri. And I would never again be blinded by love into ignoring obvious deception. The next phase of my plan was put into motion the following week. Kofi's preliminary hearing was scheduled, and he had agreed to plead guilty to all charges. Nadia had negotiated with the prosecutor to ensure that any recovered funds would be returned to me as restitution. Before the hearing, I visited Kofi one last time in jail. "The police found your storage unit," I told him through the visiting room telephone. "They found the cashier's checks, the gambling records, and the life insurance policy you took out on me." His face crumpled. "Mom, I swear I wasn't planning to hurt you. The insurance was just another way to get money if something happened naturally." "Naturally," I repeated, the word tasting like poison. "You were betting on my death, Kofi. Your own mother." "I was desperate," he whispered. "The gambling took over everything. I couldn't think straight anymore." I studied my son's face, searching for the little boy I had raised, the child who had once brought me dandelions and called them flowers. That boy was gone, replaced by a man I no longer recognized. "I'm selling the house," I told him. I've applied for permanent guardianship of Zuri. Her mother has agreed, given the circumstances. Where will you live? I've found a small apartment near Zuri's school. It's what I can afford now. Shame clouded his features. I've ruined everything for you. Not everything, I corrected him. I still have my health, my granddaughter, and enough wisdom to know that I can rebuild. But our relationship, Kofi, that may be beyond repair. I understand, he said quietly. I wouldn't forgive me either. As I stood to leave, he pressed his hand against the glass separating us. After a moment's hesitation, I placed my hand opposite his. It was the closest thing to a goodbye embrace we would have. Take care of Zuri, he said, his voice breaking. Tell her I'm sorry. I will, I promised. And I hope that whatever help you get in prison, counseling, addiction treatment, I hope it works. Not for my sake, but for yours. And for Zuri's. Walking out of that jail, I felt a weight lifting. The man behind that glass was still my son by blood. But the bond of trust between us had been severed. Now I had to focus on the future, on Zuri, on financial recovery, on rebuilding my life from the ashes of betrayal. The next day I attended Kofi's hearing. He pleaded guilty to all charges: identity theft, fraud, forgery, and criminal facilitation. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 2.5, plus restitution of all stolen funds. As they led Kofi away in handcuffs, he looked back at me one last time. I didn't wave or nod. I simply met his gaze steadily, letting him see that while I was broken, I wasn't defeated. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. The story of a grandmother discovering her son's fictional fiancé at the wedding altar had made local news. I had avoided them until now, but today I decided to speak briefly. Mrs. Okafor, one reporter called. How do you feel about your son's sentence? Justice has been served, I said simply. Now I'm focused on creating a stable home for my granddaughter. Do you have any advice for other family members who might be in similar situations? Another asked. I thought for a moment before answering. Trust should be accompanied by verification. Love shouldn't blind us to reality, and when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. With those words, I walked away from the courthouse, away from the cameras, toward the car where Nadia was waiting with Zuri. It was time to start our new life. The sale of my house closed the following month. After paying off the legitimate debts Kofi had accumulated in my name, I was left with enough to put a small down payment on a modest 2-bedroom apartment and set aside a small emergency fund. The rest would have to come from working again. Through connections from my nursing days, I secured a part-time position as a health advisor at a senior community center. The pay wasn't comparable to my former nursing salary, but combined with what remained of my Social Security benefits, it would be enough for basic expenses. Moving day was bittersweet. As the movers packed up the furniture I was keeping and loaded it into a small truck, I walked through the empty rooms of the home where I had lived for 30 years. So many memories. Joseph and I bringing baby Kofi home, birthday parties in the backyard, quiet evenings on the porch after Joseph died. Now all those memories were tainted by betrayal. Grandma, are you sad? Zuri asked, finding me standing in the empty living room. A little, I admitted. But I'm excited about our new adventure too. Me too. And you promised we could get a dog when we move. I laughed. I said we'd think about a dog. First, we need to get settled. Our new apartment was on the 3rd floor of a well-maintained building near a park. It was less than half the size of my house, but it felt cozy rather than cramped. Zuri immediately claimed the smaller bedroom and began planning how to decorate it. Can I have purple walls? She asked excitedly. The landlord won't let us paint, I explained, but we can get purple curtains and bedding. As we unpacked, I found an envelope I didn't recognize tucked into a box of kitchen items. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note. Mrs. Okafor, I sold the engagement ring Kofi gave me. It belongs to you more than me. I wish you and Zuri all the best in your new home. Desta. The gesture brought tears to my eyes. In the midst of all the deception, here was an act of genuine kindness from a woman who had also been victimized by my son's lies. I called Desta that evening to thank her. You didn't have to do this, I told her. I wanted to, she replied. It didn't feel right to keep anything connected to such dishonesty. What will you do now? I asked. I'm moving back to my hometown for a fresh start, she said. This experience has taught me a lot about looking more carefully at who people really are, not just who they claim to be. A lesson we've both learned the hard way, I agreed. That night, after Zuri was asleep in her new bedroom, I sat on the small balcony of our apartment, looking at the stars. The same stars had shone over my old house, over the church where the wedding had been disrupted, over the jail where my son now resided. The world continued turning despite the earthquake that had shattered my life. I thought about all that had happened since that fateful moment when Zuri had whispered, "Grandma, she's not the bride." In the span of just a few months, I had lost my retirement savings, my home, and my relationship with my son. But I had also gained something precious, clarity. The fog of willing blindness had lifted, and I could finally see the truth about my son, about myself, and about the difference between love and exploitation. A small voice interrupted my thoughts. "Grandma, I can't sleep. The room feels different." Zuri stood in the doorway, clutching her favorite stuffed elephant. "Come here," I said, patting the chair beside me. She climbed up and snuggled against my side. "Look at the stars," I told her. "They're the same stars we could see from our old house. Some things stay constant even when everything else changes." "Like you and me?" she asked sleepily. "Yes, sweetheart, like you and me." As Zuri drifted off to sleep against my shoulder, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead would be challenging, working in my late 60s, raising a 9-year-old, rebuilding financial security from almost nothing. But I had survived worse, and this time, I was moving forward with open eyes and hard-won wisdom. The betrayal had nearly broken me, but it hadn't destroyed me. And in its aftermath, I had discovered a strength I didn't know I possessed. The strength to recognize deception, to demand accountability, and to rebuild from ruins. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Enrolling Zuri in her new school, starting my job at the senior center, establishing our new routines. But tonight, under the steady glow of ancient stars, I allowed myself to believe in the possibility of a fresh start, not because I trusted blindly, as I once had, but because I trusted myself to face whatever came next with clear eyes and an unbroken spirit. 6 months later, Zuri and I had settled into our new life. Our apartment felt like home now, decorated with colorful throw pillows, family photos, though none of Kofi, and Zuri's artwork proudly displayed on the refrigerator. And yes, we had adopted a small dog, a gentle, older terrier mix from the shelter whom Zuri named Star because of the white mark on his forehead. My job at the senior center had expanded from part-time to nearly full-time as my expertise in nursing became valuable to the community. I conducted health screenings, organized wellness programs, and provided advice to seniors navigating the complexities of healthcare. The work was less physically demanding than bedside nursing, but still fulfilling. The financial situation remained challenging but manageable. Through Nadia's tireless efforts, we had recovered about $85,000 of the stolen money. The court had ordered Kofi to pay full restitution, but realistically, I knew I might never see most of that money. I had learned to live more frugally, to find joy in simple pleasures rather than material possessions. Zuri had adjusted remarkably well to our new circumstances. Her school counselor checked in regularly, concerned about the trauma of losing her father to prison and the dramatic change in lifestyle. But children are resilient when provided with stability and love, and Zuri blossomed in our new environment. "Grandma," she announced one evening as we walked Star in the nearby park, "I told my class about what happened to us for share time today." I felt a moment of concern. "What exactly did you tell them, sweetheart?" "I said my dad did some bad things and had to go to jail, and now I live with my grandma in a new home with our dog Star, and that even though sad things happened, we're okay now." The simplicity of her explanation brought tears to my eyes. "And how did your classmates respond?" "Keisha said her uncle is in jail too, and Ms. Peterson said I was very brave to talk about hard things." I squeezed her hand. "You are brave, Zuri. So very brave." We had visited Kofi only twice since he began serving his sentence. The first visit had been tense and tearful, with Zuri confused by the prison environment, and Kofi overwhelmed with shame. The second visit had gone better, with Kofi showing genuine interest in Zuri's new life and school activities. He had enrolled in a gambling addiction program and was taking classes toward a business degree. Small steps, but positive ones. I maintained a strict boundary with my son. I would support his relationship with Zuri as long as it remained healthy, but I would not offer financial help or allow myself to be manipulated again. Our relationship, if it was to continue at all, would be built on honesty, or not at all. On a warm Saturday morning in spring, I received an unexpected visitor. Fatima had come to the city for the weekend and stopped by our apartment. "Amara, you look wonderful," she exclaimed, embracing me. "There's a strength in your eyes that wasn't there before." "Hardship either breaks you or forges you," I replied, welcoming her inside. I chose not to be broken. As we sat drinking tea while Zuri played with Star in her bedroom, Fatima handed me a thick envelope. "I've been holding on to this for you. It's from your house. I found it hidden in the guest room closet when we were packing up." Inside the envelope was $10,000 in cash and a handwritten note from Kofi dated the day before the wedding. "For emergency use only." I stared at the money, feeling a complex mix of emotions. This had been hidden in my own home. Another secret, another deception. But it was also more restitution, more financial security for Zuri and me. "What will you do with it?" Fatima asked. "Put most of it in Zuri's education fund," I decided. "Use some to build our emergency savings. It's not my money to enjoy. It's insurance for our future." Fatima nodded approvingly. "You've changed, Amara. You see things more clearly now." "Clarity comes at a high price," I said, "but it's worth it." Later that week, I received a letter from Kofi. Unlike his previous communications, which had been full of apologies and self-pity, this one was different. "Mom, I won't ask for forgiveness I haven't earned. Instead, I want you to know I'm working every day to understand why I became someone who could hurt the person who loved me most. The counselor here says my gambling addiction was only part of the problem. The deeper issue was my sense of entitlement, my belief that I deserved an easy life at others' expense. I'm facing that ugly truth about myself now. I don't know if we'll ever rebuild what I destroyed, but I promise I'm trying to become someone worthy of being Zuri's father, even if I can never again be a son you can trust." I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. It was the most honest communication I'd had from my son in years. Not promises, not manipulation, just truth. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a start. That evening, I attended a support group for victims of financial elder abuse that Nadia had recommended. I had resisted going for months, not wanting to identify as a victim or an elder. But sitting in that circle of men and women who had experienced similar betrayals, from children, grandchildren, caregivers, I found unexpected comfort. The hardest part, a man about my age shared, was admitting I had been fooled. My pride suffered more than my wallet. Heads nodded around the circle. We had all felt that shame, that embarrassment at being deceived by those we trusted most. When my turn came, I spoke from the heart. For a long time, I thought love meant giving everything without question. I confused generosity with wisdom. Now I know that real love includes boundaries, accountability, and yes, sometimes consequences. After the meeting, several members thanked me for putting into words what they had felt but couldn't express. One woman, Grace, asked if I would speak at a community seminar on preventing elder fraud. "Your story is powerful," she said. "It might help others recognize the warning signs before they lose everything." I agreed, surprising myself. 6 months ago, I would have been too ashamed to share my experience publicly. Now I saw it as an opportunity to help others avoid my mistakes. The seminar took place at the community center where I worked. Nearly 50 seniors attended, along with social workers and law enforcement officers specializing in financial crimes. I was nervous as I approached the podium, but seeing Zuri and Fatima in the front row gave me courage. "My name is Amara Okafor," I began, "and I lost nearly $200,000 to financial fraud. The person who stole from me wasn't a stranger on the internet or a scammer calling from overseas. It was my only son. I told my story without embellishment or self-pity. I described the fictional fiancé, the escalating requests for money, the wedding that exposed the deception, and the difficult road to recovery. I shared the red flags I had ignored, and the painful lessons I had learned. Love and trust are beautiful gifts, I concluded, but they should never blind us to reality. Ask questions, verify information, set boundaries, and remember that people who truly love you will respect those boundaries, not resent them. The response was overwhelming. Many attendees shared similar experiences or concerns about relatives' behavior. A police officer thanked me for putting a face on a crime that often went unreported due to shame or family loyalty. One elderly gentleman approached me afterward, tears in his eyes. "I've been sending money to my grandson for 2 years," he confessed. "College expenses," he said, but something never felt right. "After hearing your story, I'm going to call the school tomorrow to verify his enrollment." That single conversation made my public vulnerability worthwhile. If my painful experience could prevent even one person from suffering the same fate, then some good had come from it. As Zuri and I walked home from the seminar, she slipped her small hand into mine. "I'm proud of you, Grandma," she said. "You helped those people today." "Thank you, sweetheart. That means a lot to me. Will Daddy ever live with us again?" she asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard, but I answered honestly. "I don't think so, Zuri. Your father made choices that changed our family forever. He'll always be your father. And when he finishes his time in prison, he'll be part of your life. But our home is just for us now. You, me, and Star." She nodded, processing this information with the directness of childhood. "I think that's okay," she decided. "We make a good team. Indeed we did. My granddaughter and I had weathered the storm together and emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The betrayal that could have destroyed us had instead revealed our capacity to adapt and overcome. 1 year to the day after the ill-fated wedding, I took Zuri to the beach for a small ceremony of our own design. We wrote messages on biodegradable paper, hurts we wanted to release, hopes for our future, truths we had learned. "What did you write, Grandma?" Zuri asked as we prepared to release our papers into the ocean. I wrote, "I release the burden of blind trust. I embrace the freedom of clear sight. I wrote that I'm not afraid anymore," Zuri shared, "and that I'm glad you're my grandma." Together, we watched our messages drift away on the waves, carried out to sea with the outgoing tide. The past couldn't be changed, but it could be accepted. The future couldn't be controlled, but it could be approached with wisdom. And the present, this moment of peace beside the vast ocean with my granddaughter's hand in mine, this could be fully embraced. "Are we going to be okay, Grandma?" Zuri asked, watching the horizon. "Yes, my love," I said with complete certainty. "We already are." As we turned to leave the beach, I noticed an elderly couple walking hand in hand along the shore. Their faces were etched with the lines of shared decades, their steps synchronized by years of moving through life together. One day I thought I might find companionship again, not to replace what was lost, but to create something new in this unexpected chapter of my life. For now, though, I was focused on the journey Zuri and I were navigating together. A journey from betrayal to recovery, from blind trust to informed faith, from victimhood to empowerment. I am Amara Okafor, 67 years old grandmother nurse survivor. My story isn't about what was taken from me, but about what I reclaimed. My dignity, my future, and my capacity to love wisely rather than blindly. If you've listened to my story and found some resonance with your own experience, know that you are not alone. Financial abuse, particularly within families, thrives in silence and shame. By speaking our truths, we diminish its power. By sharing our stories, we light the way for others. Please like and subscribe if my journey has touched your heart or opened your eyes. Share in the comments where you're listening from and whether any part of this story particularly spoke to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on maintaining healthy boundaries with loved ones while still showing genuine care. Remember, true love never demands blind trust. It thrives in the light of honesty, respect, and clear-eyed compassion. Thank you for witnessing my story. May it serve as both warning and encouragement as you navigate your own relationships with wisdom and care.